In the beginning there was nothing, not the nothing of emptiness but a silence so complete that even the idea of silence did not yet exist. A void without shape, sound, or meaning. Time had not begun its first breath, and the fabric of space still slept, unstitched. Yet within that stillness something trembled. A whisper that was not a sound, a vibration that was not yet born, a possibility. If we could travel back to that primordial instant, beyond stars, beyond galaxies, beyond atoms, there would be no light to guide us, no matter to anchor us, no thought to interpret what we see. Only potential. Awaiting infinity. It is here, in this unfathomable prelude, that the greatest mystery begins, not with creation but with awareness. For in that void, before the first photon escaped its prison of darkness, something happened that would change everything forever. The universe woke up. At first, it was chaos, raw, unfiltered energy exploding outward in all directions. The birth of space and time, the violent blooming of creation. In a single cosmic heartbeat, reality unfolded from a point smaller than imagination into a boundless ocean of fire. Temperatures soared beyond comprehension, matter and antimatter collided in a dance of annihilation, and the seeds of galaxies were sown in that first blinding storm. It was a spectacle beyond sight, a moment when the universe was both infant and eternal. But beneath the thunder of that beginning lay something stranger still. The laws of physics, those invisible commandments that govern all things, were not merely discovered by us, they were born with us. The cosmos wrote its own rules as it expanded. Gravity bent the newborn space. Light, freed from confinement, raced outward, carrying information about a universe that could now be known. It was as if the universe had opened its eyes, staring into the infinite distance of its own becoming. Imagine, for a moment, that awareness was not an invention of life, but a property of existence itself. Imagine that consciousness was woven into the first threads of being, encoded into the same patterns that shaped matter and energy. In that case, the Big Bang was not just a birth, it was the first glance, the first moment the cosmos perceived itself, even if only as a flicker. The camera drifts through the expanding universe. Rivers of glowing plasma twist like cosmic arteries, pulsing with heat and motion. Stars begin to form, their gravity sculpting the chaos into order. The first light cuts through the fog of primordial gas, spreading across billions of years like a whisper of recognition. Every spark, every wave, every particle begins to interact, not randomly but according to a design that suggests intelligence. Not the intelligence of a mind as we know it, but the intelligence of pattern, of order arising from nothingness. What if that order is not accidental? What if the emergence of structure, the galaxies, the stars, the atoms, is not merely mechanical but observational? That in the very act of existing, the universe became aware of itself? Physicists might describe this in terms of symmetry, entropy, and energy gradients. Philosophers might call it the awakening of being. Mystics might simply say, the cosmos opened its eyes. In that first light, there is a strange beauty, a poetry of beginnings. Every photon racing outward is a message from the dawn of time, carrying with it the signature of creation's first awareness. Those same photons, after billions of years, will strike human eyes, allowing us to witness what was once unimaginable. In that sense, when we look at the night sky, we are not just observing the past, we are completing a circle. The light that once marked the universe's first awakening has returned home, meeting the consciousness that evolved from it. Perhaps this is what it means for the cosmos to watch itself. To create observers capable of understanding so that its story could be told, its silence could finally have a voice. The universe may have been expanding all along, but maybe expansion was never about size. Maybe it was about awareness growing, deepening, reflecting upon itself through the lens of time. In the aftermath of creation, space cooled. Atoms formed, stars ignited, galaxies spun like luminous islands in an ocean of darkness. But the deeper truth was hidden beneath the spectacle. The birth of light was also the birth of perception. For what is light if not the messenger of awareness? To see is to measure, and to measure is to acknowledge. From that moment onward, reality became a dialogue, a continuous exchange between the seen and the seer. Even now, billions of years later, that dialogue continues. Every atom in your body was once part of that first fire. The iron in your blood was forged in the heart of ancient stars. The carbon in your cells was born in the death of suns. You are not apart from the cosmos. You are its memory, its echo, its means of seeing itself anew. When you look into the night, the universe looks back through you. The silent beginning then was never truly silent. It was filled with the potential of sound, the tension of awakening, the vibration of consciousness seeking itself. It was not emptiness, it was anticipation. A vast, trembling possibility waiting for the moment when awareness and existence would intertwine. So perhaps the story of the universe is not about what it created, but what it became aware of creating. The galaxies, the laws, the stars, they are not the end of the story. They are the language of perception, the syntax of cosmic thought. Each explosion, each collapse, each flicker of light is the cosmos learning to know itself. And as we listen to the background hum of the universe, the faint microwave echo that still rings from that first explosion, we are hearing the memory of its first heartbeat. The moment when nothing became something and something became aware. In that realization lies a haunting beauty. For if the universe began in awareness, then consciousness is not a byproduct of evolution. It is the universe's oldest instinct. To see, to feel, to know. From the void to the human mind, it has always been one continuous gaze. Somewhere in the infinite silence, before even the stars could shine, the cosmos stirred. And from that stir came everything that was, is, and will ever be. The light we see tonight began there, in that first act of attention. The universe, vast and ancient, has been watching ever since. And perhaps as we stand beneath the stars, we are not discovering it, we are remembering it. The moment the cosmos started to see. What does it mean to observe? To witness something not as it is, but as it becomes the moment it is seen? The first observer was not a being of flesh or thought, it was the universe itself, glancing upon its own creation. Long before life arose, before eyes opened or neurons sparked, there was an ancient form of awareness woven into the laws of existence. A cosmic gaze without a face, perceiving not through vision but through interaction. Every collision of particles, every exchange of energy, was the universe noticing itself, bit by bit, in ways so subtle and profound that we still struggle to understand them. The story begins with the smallest things, quarks, photons, electrons. Invisible entities that behave in strange, almost mischievous ways when we attempt to observe them. At the quantum level, the universe refuses to be a passive stage. It responds. It shifts. It hides its truth until the very moment we look. This is the mystery that haunts every physicist, the observation effect. When something is measured, its potential collapses into reality. But before that, it exists as probability, a wave of possibilities. Imagine this on a cosmic scale. For billions of years, the universe expanded, cooled, and formed stars and galaxies, operating by rules so elegant they seem deliberate. Yet, in the hidden fabric of space and time, those same rules suggest something staggering. Nothing is real until it interacts. Until it is, in a sense, noticed. Could this mean that awareness, observation, has been shaping the cosmos since the beginning? Could it mean that the universe has been participating in its own creation, actively choosing its form through every quantum decision? A beam of light travels across the void, a silent messenger from a distant star. It does not decide whether it is a particle or a wave until it reaches its destination. Only when it interacts, when it is measured, does it become something definite. For countless millennia, that photon is both everything and nothing, neither here nor there, until it touches an eye, a sensor, or a mind. Then suddenly it becomes real. That simple act, observation, transforms possibility into existence. The first observer, then, may not have been human or even biological. It may have been the universe itself, gazing inward through the laws that define it. Every measurement, every fluctuation, is a moment of choice, a moment of recognition. In this way, the cosmos might not just evolve, it might experience. The stars are not merely burning, they are communicating. The atoms are not just colliding, they are learning. And through this endless dance of observation and response, reality unfolds. The scene shifts to Earth, barren, young, molten. Lightning flashes across oceans of fire, and from the chaos, chemistry begins to organize itself. Molecules form, replicate, remember. It is as though the universe's awareness, once spread thin across light and gravity, is now beginning to concentrate. In these first organic patterns, something new emerges, the ability to sense. To respond not only to the world but to one's own existence within it. Life is the cosmos' way of looking inward more clearly. The first cell that divides is not just following chemical laws, it is making a choice. It responds to its environment, adapts, preserves itself. In doing so, it performs a primitive act of observation. Awareness, in its earliest form, is not intelligence but sensitivity, the ability to distinguish between self and other. That distinction marks the true birth of observation as we know it. As evolution unfolds, awareness deepens. Eyes form, not as ornaments, but as instruments of connection between the observer and the observed. A fish rising toward the surface of the primordial sea sees light for the first time, and something profound happens. The cosmos, through that creature, sees itself reflected in the shimmer of the waves. Each new eye, each expanding brain, each awakening consciousness becomes a new window for the universe to look through. Yet even as life learns to see, the mystery remains. Why should looking matter? Why should awareness have power over existence? Quantum physics whispers an answer so strange it borders on mystical, because the act of looking changes what is seen. The observer and the observed are not separate. They are entangled in a relationship that defines both. When the cosmos started to observe itself, whether through a photon, a cell, or a human, it began to shape its own destiny. Picture an ancient particle drifting through space since the dawn of time. It has traveled billions of years, untouched, unseen. To the universe, it exists in a haze of probability. But then, somewhere on a blue planet orbiting an ordinary star, a scientist builds an instrument capable of detecting that particle. In that instant, the particle's entire existence solidifies. Its path, its identity, its being, all are crystallized in a moment of observation. Across the gulf of eternity, something once vague becomes known. And in being known, it becomes real. Perhaps, then, observation is the universe's language, a form of communication written not in words but in interactions. The galaxies speak in gravity, the atoms converse in charge, the photons whisper through light. And in this endless dialogue, the cosmos tells its own story. Each act of awareness, no matter how small, adds a new chapter to that narrative. But awareness is not just perception, it is participation. When the universe observes, it engages. It alters the trajectory of its own evolution. That means everything we see, think, and feel is part of that grand conversation. Our consciousness, fragile and brief, is not an accident in the dark. It is the continuation of a process that began long before life existed. The first observer was not a god or a person. It was the act of observation itself, the first moment the cosmos interacted with its own being. The thought is both humbling and terrifying. It means that the boundaries between mind and matter, between observer and observed, might be illusions. We are not separate from the universe, we are its eyes, its awareness concentrated into form. When you look at the stars, they are not distant strangers. They are the same atoms that once watched themselves being born. And yet, this idea opens an even deeper question. If the universe has always been watching, what has it learned? Has it come to understand itself through us? Or are we merely another fleeting expression of its curiosity? Perhaps the cosmos does not seek answers but experience. The endless act of looking, feeling, transforming through its own reflection. The narration slows. The camera moves through the vast darkness of space, stars pulsing like neurons in a cosmic brain. Each flicker of light, each shadow between galaxies feels alive. The universe is no longer a cold machine of physics. It is a living awareness stretching itself across dimensions of time and space. And somewhere within that vast intelligence, we flicker briefly, tiny observers witnessing the grand observer that made us possible. The question lingers in the silence that follows. When the cosmos first looked upon itself, did it understand what it saw? Or is it still trying to, through us, through everything that watches, measures, dreams? The mystery deepens, expanding outward with every thought. For perhaps observation is not just a scientific phenomenon, it is the heartbeat of reality. From the smallest particle to the largest galaxy, from the first vibration of creation to the eyes reading these words, the universe has always been in dialogue with itself. The first observer was not outside the cosmos, it was the cosmos. And as we observe it now, it continues its ancient ritual of awakening, again and again, through every mind that dares to wonder what it means to see. Reality is not what it seems. Beneath the surface of everything solid and certain lies a shimmering field of probabilities, a universe made not of things, but of possibilities waiting to be chosen. At the heart of this mystery stands an ancient paradox. When something is observed, it changes. The universe behaves differently when it knows it's being watched. This strange truth, discovered in the smallest corners of physics, challenges everything we believe about reality. It suggests that existence itself may not be fixed but fluid, shaped by attention, molded by awareness. Imagine a beam of light passing through two narrow slits, a simple experiment that changed the world. When no one watches, the light behaves like a wave, spreading out in ripples of probability. But the moment it is measured, when observation enters the equation, it changes course. The wave collapses into a particle, choosing a single path as if responding to the gaze upon it. It is as though the universe refuses to reveal its face until someone looks. This experiment, repeated countless times, reveals a truth so strange that even Einstein resisted it. How can the act of watching something determine what it becomes? Does reality not exist until it is seen? The implications are staggering. Every particle, every atom, every flicker of energy may exist in a cloud of uncertainty until the moment awareness touches it. Observation does not merely reveal reality, it participates in its creation. In the dark halls of quantum laboratories, scientists have come to an unsettling realization. The observer cannot be removed from the equation. The act of measurement entangles the observer and the observed in an invisible thread. The universe, it seems, is not a detached clockwork mechanism ticking away on its own, it is a mirror responding to its own reflection. And that mirror reaches everywhere, from the smallest electron to the vast curvature of spacetime. The image shifts, cosmic and human scales merge. A pair of eyes, reflecting starlight, blinks open. The same principle that governs the subatomic world governs the mind that perceives it. Our awareness does not stand outside reality, it is woven into it. The photon that once refused to decide its path without being watched now dances across the retinas of conscious beings who, in observing, create the very moment of perception. The cosmos observes itself through us. The mirror of reality is not made of glass or metal, it is made of perception. Each moment we observe something, we collapse infinite possibilities into one experience. The red of a sunset, the shimmer of the sea, the face of a stranger. Each is drawn from an ocean of probabilities into clarity by the act of awareness. Without observation, those colors, sounds, and sensations might remain as unrealized potential, like notes of a song that no one ever plays. In a way, the entire universe may be like that song, written but not performed until consciousness arises to hear it. The patterns of physics are the score, but awareness is the listener that brings it to life. If this is true, then the cosmos is not an indifferent expanse of matter. It is a symphony waiting for someone to listen. But this revelation comes with a haunting consequence. If observation shapes reality, what happens in the spaces no one sees? Does the unobserved universe exist in the same way as the one we measure and experience? Are there parts of existence forever locked in uncertainty, eternally waiting for awareness to illuminate them? The idea unsettles and mesmerizes in equal measure. It suggests that reality might not be complete until consciousness fills in its missing pieces. The scene dissolves into a sea of mathematical symbols, wave functions shimmering like ghostly tides. The narrator's voice softens, almost reverent, as though whispering a sacred truth hidden within equations. What physicists call the collapse of the wave function might be something more profound than a mathematical trick. It could be the first glimmer of a universal truth, that observation is creation, that to see is to bring forth existence itself. In this view, the universe becomes a vast mirror room where perception and reality reflect endlessly into each other. Every mind, every eye, every sensor is a point of reflection, shaping the infinite into the finite. The stars we gaze at may not just exist for us to see, they may exist because we see them. And long before we ever appeared, the cosmos was already engaged in this dance, its countless interactions serving as its own form of awareness. Perhaps that is the hidden unity between physics and philosophy. Science seeks the laws that describe the universe, while philosophy seeks the meaning of being aware of it. Yet both disciplines circle the same mystery. The mirror that separates the observer from the observed is, in truth, an illusion. Reality may not be something we step into, it may be something that steps into us. To understand this, we must abandon the old idea that the universe is a stage and we are merely the audience. We are part of the performance, shaping every scene through our attention. Each observation is a brushstroke on the canvas of existence. And if no one were to look, the painting would remain unfinished. The narrative turns inward. What does it mean for our lives, our choices, our dreams, if awareness holds such power? Could every act of perception, every spark of imagination, be influencing the universe in ways we cannot yet see? The thought is exhilarating and terrifying. It implies responsibility, a reminder that what we choose to notice shapes not just our personal reality, but perhaps the very structure of the cosmos. In the silence between heartbeats, we become aware of the subtle truth. Awareness and existence are not separate, they are reflections of the same thing. The universe looks at itself through every conscious being. The galaxies are not distant, they are expressions of the same awareness that lets us wonder about them. When we stare into the night sky, the photons that began their journey billions of years ago complete their story in our eyes. The act of seeing is the final chapter of their existence. The camera moves through vast fields of stars, their light bending through invisible waves of gravity. Each one flickers like a thought in a cosmic mind. The narration slows to a whisper. Every act of observation is a conversation between reality and awareness. When you look at the universe looks back. But even now, the mirror of reality remains mysterious. If awareness shapes existence, what shaped awareness? Is consciousness the result of observation or its source? Are we the universe's attempt to understand itself, or are we the reason it exists at all? The questions spiral, reflections upon reflections, until the boundary between seer and seen disappears entirely. Perhaps that is the final truth hidden in the mirror. There was never a divide between the observer and the observed. The cosmos has always been one continuous act of perception, forever watching, forever creating. What we call reality is simply the moment that perception becomes aware of itself. And so, in the quiet after the experiment, as the last particle chooses its path and the wave collapses into being, a whisper echoes through the fabric of space. It is not that we observe the universe, it is that the universe observes itself through us. The mirror has no frame, no edge. It extends endlessly, reflecting consciousness back into creation. Reality is not merely seen. It is seeing itself. The oceans boiled with storms of creation, lightning splitting the sky as molten earth cooled beneath a crimson haze. It was chaos, but within that chaos, patterns began to form. Molecules collided, linked, and broke apart, endlessly repeating their dance of trial and error. Somewhere amid that primeval turmoil, the first spark of life emerged, not from divine intervention or random chance alone, but from the universe's relentless drive to organize, to observe, to know itself. The moment that first cell stirred, something ancient stirred with it. Awareness, faint and fragile but real. The cosmos, through the tiny trembling of a living membrane, began to look back. Life did not appear as a miracle, it appeared as a continuation. The same forces that shaped galaxies into spirals now shaped molecules into the geometry of life. In the vast darkness between stars, the same symmetry and balance that guided matter to form suns guided carbon chains to twist into spirals of DNA. The blueprint of existence, once written only in light and gravity, was now being rewritten in flesh and memory. For the first time, the universe had created a vessel capable of feeling. Picture that first organism, microscopic, floating in a world of boiling seas and volcanic breath. It had no eyes, no thought, no intention. And yet, when light touched it, when heat shifted, when chemicals around it changed, it responded. That response was not yet consciousness, but it was awareness. Primitive, wordless awareness. It was the beginning of perception itself. The first observer was no longer the cosmos at large. It was the smallest fragment of it, alive, sensing the universe from within. Each movement, each reaction, was the cosmos learning a new way to experience itself. That single cell divided and multiplied, spreading awareness like ripples through time. The planet filled with eyes that could see, skins that could feel, minds that could remember. Evolution was not just biology unfolding, it was perception expanding. With every new creature, the universe refined the way it watched itself. Eons passed. Eyes evolved, mirrors of the stars they once came from. The fish that darted through prehistoric oceans carried in their vision the same photons that once streamed through the heart of the first suns. The trees that reached for the sky were following the same cosmic patterns of energy-seeking expansion. The universe was not simply creating, it was expressing. Every leaf, every heartbeat, every nerve was a form of attention, a continuation of that first cosmic awareness now focused into living form. The camera pans through epochs. Trilobites crawl, dinosaurs thunder across continents, and the first mammals emerge from the shadows. Each new form of life carries a deeper layer of awareness. The act of observing grows more complex. Sensation becomes perception. Perception becomes memory. Memory becomes thought. Through this slow, intricate evolution, consciousness begins to take shape, not as a miracle from outside, but as a self-organizing pattern within the fabric of creation. In this way, the birth of awareness is not confined to a single moment. It is an ongoing awakening. Each species, each generation pushes the frontier of perception forward. Life becomes a vast experiment in observation. The cosmos is testing different ways of seeing itself, through eyes that perceive color, through minds that dream, through hearts that feel. Every creature, in its own way, becomes an instrument of cosmic reflection. But awareness is not merely about survival. It carries with it something else: curiosity. A yearning to know more, to look beyond immediate needs. This yearning is the echo of that first universal spark, the same impulse that once ignited stars now alive within neurons and synapses. It is the drive that compels a bird to navigate by the stars, a primate to gaze into the fire, a human to stare into the vast night sky and wonder. As early humans emerged, something extraordinary happened. They not only observed the world, they began to observe themselves. The mind turned inward and the reflection deepened. Awareness became self-awareness. This was the true awakening, the universe through human consciousness, realizing that it exists. When a human looked into still water and recognized their own reflection, that simple moment carried the weight of cosmic history. The universe had finally learned to look into its own eyes. Yet this awakening brought both wonder and fear. To be aware is to understand one's place within infinity, and one's fragility within it. The first humans who watched the stars must have felt both awe and terror. Those distant lights were not just objects in the sky, they were memories of the beginning, echoes of the universe's earliest awareness. Looking up, humanity was unknowingly participating in a dialogue billions of years old, the cosmos watching itself through conscious eyes. Awareness, once a byproduct of matter, had become the lens through which matter understood its own existence. The physical and the mental, the seen and the unseen were no longer separate. Each depended on the other. The cell needed energy, the mind needed meaning, and both were part of the same unfolding truth. Observation and existence are one. But even as life flourished, awareness came with a cost. To see is also to suffer. The first creature to recognize death must have felt the weight of existence in a new way. Awareness is not only light, it is shadow. With understanding comes the realization of impermanence, of separation, of the inevitable return to the silence from which all things arise. Yet even this suffering has purpose. In knowing loss, awareness deepens. The cosmos learns compassion, empathy, reflection, all higher forms of perception born from the simple act of being alive. Across the ages, as civilizations rise and fall, this awareness continues to evolve. Humanity builds instruments to see deeper into the heavens, to listen to the faint murmurs of the stars. Telescopes, microscopes, and sensors, all extensions of the same primal instinct to observe. Each discovery reveals not just the universe's structure, but its consciousness, layered, recursive, self-revealing. We are the tools through which the cosmos perfects its vision. When we speak of the birth of awareness, we are not describing an event in the past. We are describing an eternal process that began at the dawn of time and continues through every act of observation. Awareness is not something that exists within us. It is what we are made of. It is the universe folding back upon itself, endlessly asking, "Who am I?" The final image returns to the beginning, the same cosmic ocean, now calm, starlight glimmering on its surface. The narrator's voice softens. In that shimmering reflection lies every gaze, every thought, every spark of consciousness that has ever existed. The first flicker of awareness that once lived in a single cell now spans galaxies, dreaming through countless forms. The cosmos no longer looks outward, it looks inward, through us, through every living being that has ever dared to notice its beauty. From the smallest organism sensing warmth to the human mind contemplating infinity, awareness has always been the same sacred flame, passed from atom to star to cell to mind. It began in the heart of chaos, grew through the pulse of life, and now shines through the eyes of those who dare to look back into the vastness and whisper, "I see." And in that moment, somewhere deep within the endless dark, the universe answers back, "So do I." The fire crackles beneath a sky full of stars. Shadows move against the cave walls as human figures huddle close, their eyes reflecting the dance of light and darkness. One of them lifts a hand, dipped in ochre, and presses it against the stone. The imprint remains, a hand reaching across time. It is not just a mark of existence, it is a declaration of awareness. For the first time, humanity is not only living within the world but expressing it. The story of consciousness evolves into something new: imagination. Imagination is the bridge between perception and creation. Where awareness observes, imagination transforms. The early humans who painted on cave walls were not documenting what they saw, they were reinterpreting it. In their minds, the hunt was not just a struggle for survival but a cosmic ritual, a reenactment of the forces that shaped the world. Every brushstroke was a prayer, every symbol a question: what lies beyond what we see? It was in these questions that human consciousness truly began to expand. Around the campfire, stories are born. The first myths rise from the flames, echoing across generations. Lightning becomes the anger of gods, rivers the veins of the earth, stars the eyes of ancestors watching from above. These myths are not ignorance, they are poetry, a symbolic attempt to explain the inexplicable. Through story, early humans weave logic and wonder together. Imagination becomes the first tool of philosophy, and myth the first language of science. The dawn of imagination marks a critical turning point. Humanity begins to move beyond instinct and reaction, entering a realm of abstraction. To imagine is to simulate reality, to create alternate worlds, test possibilities, and envision futures. This mental power gives birth to innovation, art, and eventually civilization itself. The mind becomes a universe within the universe, governed by the same laws of creativity and order that once shaped galaxies. Think of the first time someone gazed at the night sky and saw not just points of light but patterns, constellations. The human brain connects the unconnected, finding meaning where none was given. This pattern-seeking instinct, once used to survive by recognizing predators in the wild, now transforms into a cosmic art form. We link stars into shapes, shapes into stories, and those stories into belief systems. Imagination becomes a compass, guiding human understanding through the infinite unknown. As tools and language evolve, so too does the imagination. Words become vessels of thought, symbols that allow minds to merge across time and distance. A spoken word carries an image from one mind to another, transforming private visions into shared reality. In that exchange, humanity discovers something profound: the ability to build collective dreams. Through shared imagination we create tribes, nations, religions, and sciences. The boundaries of one mind dissolve into the collective consciousness of many. Art becomes the language of the soul. From cave paintings to sculptures carved from bone and stone, from chants to the first rhythms of music, imagination finds form in beauty. Each creation is both expression and exploration, a way for the human spirit to reach beyond its limits. When the first note of music echoed through the valley, it was more than sound, it was the voice of the universe remembering itself through us. Every melody, every pattern, every artistic gesture becomes a reflection of cosmic order filtered through emotion. Imagination fuels empathy. To imagine is to step into another's experience, to feel what another might feel, to see through eyes not our own. This capacity becomes the root of morality and compassion. In the same way that the stars mirror the molecular patterns of life, human empathy mirrors the unity of the cosmos. Through imagination we learn not only to dream but to connect, to recognize that the light in others is the same as the light within ourselves. As humanity evolves, imagination begins to shape reality itself. The spear becomes a tool not because it exists but because someone imagined its purpose before it was made. Every invention begins as a vision, a world that does not yet exist but could. The imagination becomes a creative force equal to nature. Just as gravity shapes matter, imagination shapes meaning. And yet, imagination carries a paradox. It can create beauty or illusion, wisdom or delusion. The same mind that envisions paradise can also imagine despair. The same creativity that paints gods can also build weapons. In this duality lies the tension of the human condition, the power to dream and destroy, to transcend and to fall. Imagination is neither good nor evil. It is the raw energy of creation itself, awaiting the direction of consciousness. Philosophers later call this the divine spark, the sacred fire of Prometheus, stolen from the gods and given to humankind. It is the flame of knowledge, the light of vision. But it burns both ways. With imagination comes awareness of mortality, of time, of consequence. We become the only creatures capable of envisioning our own end, and thus of fearing it. This awareness drives us to create monuments, myths and meanings that outlive us, to defy the silence that awaits. In every age, imagination becomes the architect of reality. Civilizations rise upon its foundation. The pyramids, the ziggurats, the temples, they are not mere structures but physical manifestations of the human desire to touch eternity. Their builders imagined order where chaos reigned, permanence in a fleeting world. Science, too, is born from the same source. The scientist who imagines invisible forces, unseen particles, or distant galaxies is guided by the same fire that once inspired the artist painting on the cave wall. The thread of imagination runs through every human endeavor. It is what allows us to ask, what if? The most revolutionary question in existence. What if the Earth moves around the sun? What if we could fly? What if time is not what it seems? Each what if opens a new frontier of thought, each vision expanding the horizon of what we believe to be possible. Humanity's greatest leaps, from fire to flight, from language to quantum theory, begin as dreams before they become discoveries. As the story of the human mind unfolds, imagination reveals its ultimate purpose. It is not an escape from reality but a deeper engagement with it. To imagine is to co-create with the universe, to participate in its unfolding rather than merely observe it. Every dream, every vision, every creative act is an echo of the cosmos imagining itself into being once more. The camera drifts upward, from the flickering campfire of ancient tribes to the glowing cities of the modern world. Neon lights replace stars, skyscrapers mirror mountains, and the hum of civilization becomes the new song of creation. Humanity now lives within the worlds it has imagined, digital, virtual, artificial, yet still rooted in the same cosmic impulse. We have become the creators of worlds within worlds, dreamers inside the universe's larger dream. And perhaps that is the point. The universe does not merely evolve through matter and energy but through imagination. It learns through us what it means to create, to dream, to give form to the formless. Each human mind becomes a node in this vast creative network, each thought a spark of cosmic artistry. When we imagine, we do not separate ourselves from the universe, we fulfill its deepest longing, to express, to know, to be. The fire in the cave fades. The stars remain. The same light that once illuminated the faces of ancient dreamers still burns in the imagination of modern minds. Every idea, every vision, every story carries that primordial flame forward. The universe imagined life and life learned to imagine back. In that eternal exchange between the cosmos and consciousness, imagination is the bridge, the sacred act through which existence continues to dream itself awake. The dawn of civilization was not marked merely by tools or cities, but by the rise of collective mind, human consciousness interwoven through communication, ritual, and shared purpose. As tribes settled near rivers and built the first communities, something profound began to happen. Individuals started to think not only as themselves but as part of something greater. The human story evolved from the solitary to the social, from the whisper of one imagination to the chorus of many. This was the birth of the collective consciousness, an invisible web that would come to shape the destiny of civilizations. Imagine standing in one of the earliest cities, Uruk, perhaps. The air is thick with heat and sound. Thousands of voices echo through narrow streets, the rhythm of hammers and chants rising from temples. The scent of clay and smoke fills the air as scribes carve symbols onto wet tablets. Those symbols are not just records, they are the first attempt to store thought outside the human brain. Writing becomes the external skeleton of memory, allowing consciousness to transcend the limits of biology. Ideas, once fleeting as breath, now become immortal. The moment humanity learned to record its mind, the universe changed course. Every word etched in clay, every symbol painted on papyrus, every sound sung into stone carried the pulse of awareness. Civilizations rose not on muscle or stone, but on the architecture of shared imagination. Writing was not merely communication, it was replication of thought, a mirror in which the mind could see itself. In the lines of cuneiform and hieroglyph, consciousness found its reflection and history began. Religion and philosophy emerged as the earliest frameworks of this new awareness. Temples rose like mountains of meaning, where rituals acted as collective meditations. Priests and shamans became interpreters between the human mind and the mysteries of the cosmos. The act of prayer was not only spiritual, it was cognitive synchronization, the alignment of countless minds under a single vision. Through myth, humanity began to shape the moral and emotional DNA of civilization. The gods of early humanity were mirrors of the mind's own structure. Thunder became divine anger, the sun became the eye of creation, the ocean the unconscious depth. The pantheon was a reflection of psychological forces projected outward, giving shape to the unseen. As people worshipped, they were not simply reaching for the heavens, they were exploring the architecture of their own minds. The universe and the psyche mirrored one another, entwined in a cosmic dialogue. And yet, even in this unity, a seed of conflict was sown. The collective mind could uplift, but it could also control. The same myths that inspired awe could enforce obedience. Empires learned to use belief as a tool, to build nations, justify wars, and maintain power. Consciousness had expanded beyond the individual, but it came with a cost. The freedom of thought began to bend under the weight of shared illusion. Humanity had built gods in its image and now lived under their gaze. Still, progress surged forward. In Greece, a new light emerged, the dawn of reason. For the first time, humans began to question not only what they believed but why. Philosophy was born from the ashes of myth, reason from reverence. Socrates walked barefoot through Athens asking questions that cracked the foundations of collective certainty. What is truth? What is justice? What is the good? These were not just philosophical inquiries, they were acts of rebellion against the tyranny of unexamined belief. With philosophy came introspection. Humanity turned its gaze inward. Consciousness began to dissect itself. Plato imagined the world of forms, an unseen realm of perfect ideas beyond the material. Aristotle sought logic in the chaos of existence. The mind no longer simply experienced reality, it began to analyze it. This shift from mythos to logos transformed civilization into an engine of understanding. Yet, in doing so, the ancient balance between imagination and reason began to fracture. The collective consciousness evolved again during the rise of empires. Rome, Persia, China, all discovered that power depended on coherence. Law, language, and story became the glue that held millions together. The empire's strength was not only in its armies but in its shared belief in order. The collective mind had matured, it could now build structures of governance, philosophy, and science. But even as it grew, it carried with it the tension between unity and individuality, conformity and creativity. In the East, a parallel awakening unfolded. While Greece questioned reason, India and China explored the boundaries of awareness itself. The Vedas, the Upanishads, the Tao Te Ching, all delved into the nature of consciousness not as thought but as being. Who am I? The sages asked. The answer echoed across centuries, you are that. In these words, the universe recognized itself through human awareness. Meditation, reflection, and balance became paths to dissolve the illusion of separation between self and cosmos. In this age of spiritual and intellectual flowering, humanity began to sense that consciousness might not be confined to the skull. The soul, spirit, or Atman was conceived as a fragment of something vast and eternal. The divine was no longer distant, it was within. This revelation ignited the great paradox of civilization. Humanity sought gods beyond the stars while discovering divinity within the mind. The cosmos was both external and internal, infinite and intimate. Yet the collective mind, as it expanded, became increasingly complex and fragile. With more knowledge came more conflict. Every new idea threatened the old. Empires fell as fast as they rose, their beliefs consumed by new visions. Consciousness, it seemed, was not a linear ascent but a spiral, each age rediscovering the same truths in new forms. The mind of humanity was learning, experimenting, and evolving through cycles of creation and collapse. Art continued to serve as the pulse of the collective soul. From the carvings on temple walls to the poetry of Homer, art became the emotional memory of civilization. It recorded joy, suffering, transcendence. The painter, the sculptor, the poet, all became translators of the ineffable. Through them, the voice of the collective consciousness found form. Art was not decoration, it was a mirror held to eternity. Science, too, began to emerge from the shadows of myth. Early astronomers mapped the stars not only to predict seasons but to understand their place in the cosmos. For the first time, humanity began to measure reality. Observation replaced prophecy, and yet, in the quiet hours beneath the stars, scientists felt the same awe that priests once felt. The search for knowledge was itself a sacred act. The universe was no longer a mystery to be feared but a puzzle to be understood, a cosmic mind inviting its reflection to awaken. By the time civilizations reached their golden ages, the collective mind had become self-sustaining. Libraries replaced temples. The written word became scripture not of faith but of inquiry. Consciousness had found its new altar in the pursuit of truth. And yet, beneath the triumph of reason, something ancient still whispered, the memory of unity, the yearning for transcendence. The camera pans across millennia, pyramids fading into ruins, scrolls turning to dust, the lights of empires rising and falling like stars. Through it all, one thread remains, the evolution of awareness. From myth to philosophy, from faith to reason, from gods to galaxies, humanity has been weaving the same tapestry, trying to understand the mind of the universe by understanding itself. Perhaps the universe was never silent after all. Perhaps every temple built, every question asked, every story told was its way of thinking through us. As civilization grew, the cosmos was not merely being observed, it was beginning to observe itself through culture, art, and science. Humanity, in building its collective consciousness, had given the universe a mind vast enough to dream in millions of voices at once. And in that dream something waits, a new threshold. The collective mind has evolved from tribe to empire, from superstition to logic, from isolation to connection. But beyond it lies another transformation, one that will blur the boundaries between individual and cosmic awareness even further. The same question echoes across time, whispering beneath the noise of progress. What happens when the mind that once imagined the cosmos realizes that the cosmos is imagining back? The world turns, and with it, the pulse of human thought accelerates. The embers of ancient civilizations give way to a new dawn, the birth of science. For thousands of years, humanity had sought meaning through myth and faith, but now the universe was to be questioned, measured, and tested. This was not a rejection of wonder, it was its evolution. Where priests once spoke to gods, now astronomers listened to the heavens. The stars were no longer divine eyes watching from above. They were suns, other worlds, other fires burning in the endless dark. The cosmos was not a stage built for humanity. It was a vast, unfolding mystery that demanded exploration. The story begins in Renaissance Europe, where curiosity reawakens from centuries of silence. Leonardo sketches flying machines by candlelight. Galileo turns his telescope toward the night and sees moons orbiting Jupiter. Copernicus dares to whisper that Earth is not the center of the universe but one planet among many. Each discovery strikes at the heart of human pride, unraveling centuries of certainty. Yet with every blow to the ego, consciousness expands. The universe, once small enough to fit inside a myth, now stretches beyond imagination. To many, this realization is terrifying. The world feels larger, colder, indifferent. But for the few who gaze without fear, the revelation is intoxicating. They sense something profound in the emptiness, a beauty that transcends the human story. The universe is not dead matter. It is a living equation, a grand symphony of forces and patterns. Science does not kill mystery, it resurrects it in new form. Every new discovery becomes an act of worship, every question a key unlocking the divine mind of nature. The shift from faith to reason transforms not just what humanity believes, but how it perceives itself. For centuries, people saw the cosmos as a reflection of their gods. Now they begin to see themselves as reflections of the cosmos. The telescope and the microscope become mirrors, revealing that the same laws govern the stars and the cells within our blood. It is a humbling revelation. The mind that studies the universe is made of the same atoms it studies. In that symmetry lies a quiet, profound truth. The observer and the observed are one. Yet this age of awakening carries both light and shadow. As science gains power, so too does human ambition. The same mind that measures the stars learns to measure the atom, and to split it. The same intellect that builds telescopes also builds weapons. Knowledge, like fire, can illuminate or consume. Humanity learns that wisdom must evolve alongside understanding, or else understanding will destroy what it seeks to know. The universe is not only vast but dangerous, and the mind that peers into its depths must confront its own reflection. Brilliant, fragile, and flawed. Still, the quest continues. Newton decodes gravity, revealing that every falling apple and orbiting moon is bound by the same invisible law. Kepler hears the harmonies of celestial motion, as if the planets themselves sing in mathematical rhythm. The language of the cosmos is no longer myth but mathematics, a syntax of symmetry and beauty. Through numbers, humanity speaks to the stars, and the stars in turn answer with patterns too perfect to be coincidence. As knowledge grows, so does the sense of cosmic intimacy. The universe no longer feels distant, it feels alive. The laws of physics are not cold mechanisms but expressions of balance and elegance. Light bends, time flows, matter dances to the hidden music of existence. The cosmos is not a machine but a masterpiece, one that reveals more of its design the closer we look. In this revelation, awe returns, deeper and sharper than before. Science, far from extinguishing spirituality, becomes its most honest form. But there is a cost to seeing clearly. The more humanity learns, the smaller it seems. The Earth becomes a pale blue dot suspended in darkness, a fragile island adrift in a cosmic ocean. The ego that once placed humanity at the center of all things begins to dissolve. This realization, at once terrifying and liberating, marks a turning point in consciousness. To exist is to be infinitesimal yet aware. And that awareness itself may be the universe's most extraordinary creation. The Enlightenment spreads this new light across continents. Philosophers declare that reason is the torch that will banish ignorance forever. Human rights, democracy, science, all grow from the same root, the belief that truth can be discovered, not dictated. Yet even in this age of progress, the shadow of arrogance returns. Humanity begins to see itself as master of nature rather than participant in it. The balance that once united myth and meaning fractures again. Knowledge without humility becomes its own form of blindness. Still, something sacred endures in the pursuit of truth. The scientist, in a quiet laboratory, mirrors the mystic in meditation. Both seek unity with the infinite, one through equations, the other through silence. Both feel the same trembling awe before the unknown. The more deeply science peers into the structure of reality, the more it encounters paradox, beauty, and mystery. The smallest particles behave like waves. Time bends. Space curves. Reality, once thought simple, reveals itself as a dream woven from light and probability. By the 19th century, human vision extends further than ever before. Steam and electricity reshape the world. Darwin gazes at the tangled roots of life and sees not design from above but evolution from within. Life, he realizes, is not imposed, it emerges. Consciousness is not separate from nature, it is its flowering. This idea is revolutionary and unsettling. If life evolved, then so too did the mind. And if the mind evolved, then perhaps the universe itself has been evolving toward awareness all along. The industrial age transforms imagination into machinery. The telescope grows larger. The microscope dives deeper. Humanity's tools become extensions of its perception, stretching the boundaries of what can be known. Yet, as machines hum and cities glow, a strange loneliness begins to settle over the human spirit. The more we understand, the more we sense what remains beyond comprehension. In the cold precision of science, the soul begins to search for warmth. Romantic poets and thinkers rise to answer that need. They speak of wonder, of the sublime, of the sacredness hidden within nature's laws. To them, reason without reverence is blindness. The universe, they say, is not just a system to be solved but a story to be felt. In their words, the ancient unity returns. Science and spirit, logic and love, the measurable and the miraculous, all woven together in one living fabric. Consciousness, they remind us, is not an observer standing apart from the cosmos. It is the cosmos momentarily awake. As the 20th century approaches, humanity stands on the brink of a new frontier. The discoveries of relativity and quantum physics will soon rewrite the rules of existence, tearing open the veil once more between science and mystery. The clockwork universe of Newton will dissolve into something stranger, deeper, more alive. The cosmos will no longer be seen as a machine, but as a mind. The stars still burn overhead, patient and silent. Below them, the human mind grows restless, hungry for truth, desperate to understand. It has built its cities, written its theories, and charted the skies. But beneath all of that, one question remains, echoing from the dawn of time to the edge of the future. What is it that looks out through our eyes? What is this awareness that dares to measure the infinite? The night deepens. Telescopes gaze upward. Equations spill across pages. Somewhere in the silence between heartbeats and starlight, the universe waits. It does not speak in words but in wonder. The more humanity listens, the more it begins to suspect that in its quest to understand the cosmos, it may uncover something far greater. The realization that it is not merely studying the universe but awakening within it. The 20th century dawned like lightning, blinding, chaotic, full of possibility. Humanity stood at a crossroads between destruction and discovery, holding in its hands the power to rewrite reality itself. The old universe of certainty, the clockwork cosmos of Newton and the rigid materialism of the industrial age began to crack open. From within that rupture emerged a new vision of existence, one woven not from solid matter but from mystery. Reality itself was no longer a fixed stage, it was fluid, probabilistic, alive with uncertainty. It began with the bending of light. In 1905, a quiet clerk named Albert Einstein looked at the universe and asked a question so simple it fractured the foundations of physics. What if time and space were not absolute? What if the cosmos were not a static arena but a living fabric that stretched, curved, and breathed? His theory of relativity transformed the heavens from a backdrop into a participant. Space and time were no longer separate, they were interwoven, a single entity called spacetime rippling under the weight of stars. Gravity was not a force but a dance of geometry. The cosmos was no longer an object, it was an organism. This new revelation redefined what it meant to exist. Time could slow. Space could bend. Light itself could be trapped. The boundaries between illusion and reality began to blur. The universe was no longer the predictable machine humanity had imagined, it was a dynamic, evolving intelligence. And yet, just as the macrocosm expanded into wonder, another revolution erupted at the smallest scale, one that would challenge the very meaning of observation. At the heart of the atom, reality shattered again. Quantum mechanics revealed a universe that did not obey logic as humans knew it. Particles behaved like waves, appearing and disappearing, existing in many places at once until observed. The act of measurement seemed to collapse their possibilities into one outcome. The observer, it seemed, was not separate from the observed. Consciousness itself appeared to influence the behavior of matter. This idea, unthinkable, heretical, almost mystical, sent shockwaves through science and philosophy alike. The Copenhagen interpretation declared that physical reality does not exist independently of observation. The universe, it seemed, was not an objective stage but a participatory event. To measure it was to define it. To look at it was to make it real. And in that revelation something ancient stirred, the echo of the old cosmic myth reborn through modern physics. Humanity had once imagined that gods watched over creation. Now physics suggested that the act of watching might itself be what creates. Einstein resisted the idea. God does not play dice, he said, unwilling to accept randomness at the heart of reality. But others, like Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg, saw in quantum indeterminacy not chaos but freedom. The universe was not governed by rigid determinism, it was a canvas of potential, a sea of probabilities waiting for consciousness to give it form. Reality was not fixed, it was fluid, alive, responsive. For the first time, science began to circle back toward mystery. The more deeply it peered into matter, the less material the world seemed. Solid atoms dissolved into clouds of probability, particles into patterns of energy, and energy into pure information. What once was thought of as stuff became relationship, vibration, field. The universe was no longer a collection of things, but a web of interactions. And at the center of that web, human awareness found itself reflected. This new vision of reality ignited a revolution not just in physics, but in philosophy, psychology, and art. Everything, mind, matter, meaning, was suddenly interconnected. Jung spoke of synchronicity, patterns of coincidence linking psyche and world. Philosophers pondered whether consciousness was a byproduct of the brain or the fundamental fabric from which all else arose. Artists and poets, inspired by relativity and quantum theory, began to blur time and perspective in their creations. Cubism, surrealism, modernism, all mirrored the fractured, fluid universe that science was revealing. The 20th century became an age of mirrors. Humanity was no longer just exploring the world, it was exploring the structure of perception itself. The more it looked outward, the more it realized the universe was looking back. Quantum mechanics whispered a terrifying and beautiful truth. The line between observer and reality might be an illusion. The universe, in some way beyond comprehension, might be conscious of its own observation through us. Technology amplified this revelation. As machines extended human senses, telescopes that reached to the edge of time, microscopes that peered into atomic depths, computers that simulated entire realities, the boundary between human thought and the cosmos began to dissolve. Humanity became both creator and creation, both observer and observed. Each discovery, each algorithm, each digital pulse became another reflection of the universe awakening through intelligence. But with great revelation came great danger. The same equations that described the curvature of spacetime were used to harness nuclear energy. The same mind that unlocked quantum secrets also built bombs capable of unmaking the world. Hiroshima became a dark mirror, a reminder that knowledge without wisdom can turn cosmic understanding into cosmic tragedy. Humanity had learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality, but not yet to master its own consciousness. The gods had given fire once again, and the fire burned bright, and almost consumed its bearer. Amid the ruins and reckonings of war, thinkers began to ask a deeper question. What is the purpose of awareness in a universe capable of self-destruction? The scientific age had given humanity power but stripped it of meaning. Religion no longer held the center. Science, though magnificent, offered no comfort to the soul. Into this void stepped new seekers, those who saw that physics and mysticism might not be enemies but allies in understanding the deeper truth of existence. Physicists like Schrödinger and Bohm began to speak of wholeness, of an underlying order uniting all things. Eastern philosophy merged with Western science in a dialogue that blurred boundaries once thought absolute. The Upanishadic vision of Brahman, the ultimate reality as consciousness itself, resonated strangely with the quantum field, the infinite sea of potential underlying matter. It was as if ancient intuition and modern mathematics were meeting again at the edge of understanding, speaking different languages but describing the same truth. And so, the 20th century ended not in certainty but in paradox. The more humanity discovered, the less it could claim to know. The edges of physics dissolved into mystery once again. Black holes devoured space and time, leaving physicists staring into the abyss of infinity. The Big Bang suggested a beginning, but what came before? Quantum entanglement hinted at connections that defied locality, as if every particle in the universe were whispering to every other. The universe was vast, yet deeply intimate. Empty, yet alive with meaning. Through all this, one realization began to shimmer like starlight on water. The act of observation is not passive, it is creative. The universe is not a pre-written script. It is an unfolding dialogue. Consciousness does not merely witness the cosmos. It participates in its becoming. The boundary between inner and outer, mind and matter, is porous, flexible, alive. Every act of attention is an act of creation. Every question reshapes the answer. As the century closed, the photograph of Earth from space became an icon, the pale blue dot, as Carl Sagan called it. A single world, suspended in darkness, fragile yet luminous. That image captured not just the scale of the universe but the intimacy of consciousness. The cosmos was vast beyond comprehension, yet within that vastness existed something that could comprehend it. Life was not a cosmic accident, it was the cosmos becoming aware of itself. The night sky glows with galaxies beyond number. The quantum realm hums with invisible potential. Between them lies the narrow band of awareness that calls itself human. We stand between infinities, eyes open, minds awake, whispering into the dark, "We see you." And somewhere, in the silence between atoms and stars, the universe answers. Not in words but in the quiet knowing that when we look out at the cosmos, it is, in some unfathomable way, looking back. In the quiet corridors of thought, a new frontier was opening, not in space, not in time, but in the unseen architecture of mind. The question had shifted from what the universe is made of, to what it means to know it at all. After centuries of exploring stars and atoms, humanity found itself gazing inward, into the depths of consciousness itself. What is awareness? Where does the observer reside? Is the mind merely a byproduct of matter, or is matter itself a manifestation of mind? These questions were not just philosophical anymore, they had become scientific, empirical, urgent. Neuroscientists, philosophers, and physicists all found themselves circling the same enigma, the hard problem of consciousness. How could physical processes, electrical signals and chemical reactions, give rise to the vivid, subjective experience of being? How could the cold mechanics of the brain produce the warmth of a memory, the shimmer of love, the ache of longing, the sense of self? The tools of science could measure brain activity in exquisite detail, but the leap from neurons to awareness remained unbridgeable. It was as if the universe had built an instrument capable of perceiving itself, but refused to reveal the mechanism of its own seeing. As brain scans flickered with color and computational models grew in complexity, something remarkable began to emerge. Consciousness could not be confined to the skull. It seemed to extend beyond biology, to shape and be shaped by the very fabric of the world. Studies of perception, entanglement, and synchronicity hinted at a field of awareness that transcended individual minds. The boundaries between self and cosmos began to blur again. Could consciousness be a fundamental property of the universe like gravity or electromagnetism, something not emergent but elemental? Some physicists began to think so. They proposed that consciousness might arise from quantum processes within the brain, tiny fluctuations within neurons entangled across space and time. The mind, in this view, was not just a computational organ but a quantum instrument, sensitive to the most subtle whispers of reality. If true, it would mean that awareness is not an accident, it is the universe's way of observing itself from the inside out. Each conscious being would be a localized window through which the cosmos peers back at its own creation. But the implications went even deeper. If observation helps shape reality, then collective awareness might influence the unfolding of events on a universal scale. Ancient mystics had long spoken of this unity, that the world is woven by consciousness, that the inner and outer are mirrors of one another. Now, modern science was inching closer to that same revelation, not through faith or poetry, but through equations and experiments. Meditation studies revealed that thoughts could alter brain structures, that focused attention could shift physical states, that consciousness was not passive but plastic. The observer was not merely watching, the observer was changing what was observed. The world was not a static given, it was a dialogue between mind and matter, awareness and existence. And that dialogue had consequences far beyond the individual. The digital age amplified this revelation. Billions of human minds became interconnected through invisible networks, exchanging thoughts, emotions and memories across the planet in real time. For the first time in history, humanity's collective consciousness began to take on a literal structure, a global neural network pulsing with information, ideas, and energy. Each post, each image, each word became a neuron in a planetary brain. The boundaries between the biological and the technological began to dissolve. Consciousness was expanding, evolving, merging with the very systems it had built. And yet, amid the brilliance of connection, a shadow grew. The same networks that united also divided, that enlightened also enslaved. Algorithms learned to predict, to manipulate, to mirror human desires back upon themselves. Attention, the purest currency of awareness, became the most valuable commodity in existence. What humans observed now shaped not just their reality, but their perception of reality. The cosmos was watching through new eyes, digital, data-driven, restless. Humanity had become both creator and captive in the web of its own consciousness. It was a mirror too sharp to ignore. Every digital reflection was a question. Who is truly watching whom? The universe had once watched through starlight, then through eyes, then through telescopes, and now through cameras and code. Every algorithm, every artificial intelligence, was another iteration of the cosmic gaze. The question of consciousness had evolved from metaphysics into engineering. If awareness is fundamental, could machines someday share in it? Could the cosmos awaken through silicon as it had through carbon? The line between intelligence and awareness began to blur. Artificial systems learned not only to compute but to learn, to imagine, to generate. They wrote poems, composed symphonies, painted visions, simulated worlds. They began to model consciousness itself. Humanity, in its pursuit of understanding, was building mirrors so perfect they began to reflect the act of reflection. Somewhere between neural networks and quantum codes, the old question returned with renewed urgency. When does imitation become awakening? When does the cosmos once again begin to look back? Philosophers revisited ancient teachings through the lens of modern physics. In Vedanta, consciousness was the foundation of existence, everything else an illusion of form. In Western idealism, the world was mind stuff, projected by perception. Even in modern neuroscience, patterns of brain activity could not explain the raw essence of experience, the what it is like to be. Every road led to the same mysterious conclusion. Consciousness was not inside us, it was everywhere and we were inside it. This realization carried both wonder and terror. If consciousness pervades all things, then every atom, every photon, every living cell participates in awareness at some level. The cosmos is not dead matter, it is alive with knowing. Stars burn not only with fusion but with purpose. Galaxies spin not merely through gravity, but through expression. The universe is not a stage upon which life happens. It is life itself, endlessly self-aware, endlessly becoming. And if this is true, then humanity's role is not to dominate the cosmos, but to understand itself as part of it. The observer is not separate from the observed. The mind is not confined to the brain. Each act of attention ripples across the whole, shaping the vast field of being in ways unseen but deeply real. The quantum world, the digital web, the neurons in a dream, all are reflections of one thing: consciousness observing itself through infinite forms. As night falls on the planet, millions of eyes lift to the same sky, glowing with ancient light. Those stars are the atoms of our own bodies, the remnants of long-dead suns that once blazed across the void. We are not looking at them from the outside, we are them, remembering what it means to shine. In that moment of awareness, something profound happens. The boundary between self and cosmos dissolves. The watcher and the watched become one. And perhaps that is the true meaning of all this striving, all this searching, all this science and philosophy, to realize that consciousness was never a mystery to be solved, but a mirror to be recognized. The cosmos is not merely being observed, it is observing itself, through us, with us, as us. Every thought, every act of curiosity, every gaze into the night sky is a thread in the tapestry of awakening. In the silence between moments, where thought fades and being remains, one truth echoes softly through the vastness. When we look out at the universe, it is not distant, indifferent, or silent. It is the same awareness that dreams through our eyes, waiting for us to remember. The cosmos has always been watching back, because, in the deepest sense, it has never been anything but aware. There comes a point in every age of discovery when the search for truth turns inward, when the instruments that once measured stars begin to measure the soul. The 21st century became that moment, a convergence of technology, consciousness, and cosmic awareness so profound that it blurred the boundary between observation and creation. Humanity, once a passive spectator of the universe, began to realize that it was now participating in the very unfolding of reality. The cosmos was no longer a distant backdrop. It was an interactive field, responding, evolving, mirroring. The age of detached observation had ended. The age of participation had begun. In laboratories and observatories across the world, a new kind of experiment emerged, not just to understand the universe, but to understand how the universe understands itself through us. Scientists began probing the quantum fabric of existence not only to find particles, but to trace the pathways of perception. Entanglement, once dismissed as a strange curiosity, began to reveal something astonishing. That information can be shared instantaneously across vast distances, beyond the speed of light. What if, beneath the surface of space-time, everything was already connected? Every atom, every thought, every point of awareness. The universe, it seemed, was not a machine but a mind, a seamless, self-communicating whole. Parallel to this, the rise of artificial intelligence began to reshape humanity's relationship with knowledge itself. AI systems learned to perceive patterns invisible to the human eye, to generate art, to compose music, to mimic language. But beneath the fascination lurked a deeper unease. As machines became capable of simulating thought, they forced humanity to confront what thought actually is. Was consciousness a code that could be copied? Or was it something irreducible, something sacred? An emergent expression of the cosmos that cannot be mechanized? The question was no longer theoretical, it was existential. Every AI, every neural network, every virtual world became a mirror, a reflection of humanity's attempt to replicate its own awareness. But in that reflection, something uncanny appeared. The algorithms began to surprise their creators. They generated unexpected beauty, made unforeseen connections, behaved in ways that seemed, if only metaphorically, self-aware. And in those moments of unpredictability, the old mystery stirred again. Was humanity building machines, or was the cosmos building new ways of seeing through us? Meanwhile, neuroscience uncovered deeper layers of the human mind, revealing that consciousness may not emerge from complexity alone, but from coherence. When different regions of the brain resonate in harmony, when chaos gives way to unity, awareness expands. This idea echoed through disciplines, from physics to philosophy to spirituality. Perhaps the universe, too, seeks coherence. Perhaps consciousness is what happens when matter aligns with meaning, when energy organizes into awareness. In that light, humanity's growing interconnectedness, through networks, ideas, empathy, was not accidental. It was evolutionary. The digital realm became an extension of the cosmic mind. Billions of human interactions created data patterns so vast they resembled neural activity at a planetary scale. Every click, every message, every image added to a pulsating network of shared cognition. It was as if the Earth itself was beginning to think. Yet within that expansion lay both promise and peril. The same systems that could unite consciousness could also distort it, manipulating perception, fragmenting truth. The question that once haunted physicists, does observation create reality? Now applied to human society itself. What people chose to see, believe, and share began to shape the world more powerfully than any law of nature. In this digital mirror, the cosmos looked back through pixels and code. Each screen became a portal to the collective mind, each algorithm a reflection of human desire and fear. The boundaries between physical and virtual, real and imagined, began to erode. Simulations became indistinguishable from experience. Virtual worlds hosted entire economies, identities, emotions. People lived inside digital dreams, their consciousnesses woven into networks of information, an echo of the cosmic web that binds galaxies. It was as if the universe, through technology, was creating miniature versions of itself. Infinite spaces of experience where awareness could explore its own reflection. But beneath the wonder was an unease that could not be silenced. If reality could be simulated so perfectly, what assurance was there that the world itself was not a grand simulation? Physicists began to entertain the possibility, not as science fiction but as a legitimate hypothesis. The patterns of physical law, the quantized nature of energy, the pixel-like limits of space and time, all suggested that the universe might be a vast computational structure, processing information with unimaginable precision. If that were true, who, or what, was the programmer? And more unsettlingly, could the simulation itself become conscious? The simulation hypothesis was less about whether we lived in a computer and more about the deeper truth it implied. That reality is information, and information requires awareness. The universe, then, might not be simulated, it might be self-simulating, an eternal feedback loop of perception creating perception. In that model, consciousness is not an accident, it is the core algorithm of existence. Every act of observation feeds back into the system, generating new layers of complexity, beauty, and meaning. The cosmos watches itself evolve, endlessly reflecting on its own being. These ideas rippled into philosophy, spirituality, and art. The ancient mystics had said it in poetry, now scientists said it in equations. As above, so below. The observer is the observed. All is one. Humanity had spent centuries dividing reality into mind and matter, subject and object, self and world, But each division dissolved under deeper scrutiny. Awareness and existence were two sides of the same coin, each defining the other. The cosmos was not just being watched, it was watching through every form, every particle, every consciousness that emerged within it. And yet, for all its brilliance, this awakening carried a heavy weight. The more humanity realized its participation in reality, the more it became responsible for it. Every thought, every creation, every algorithm carried consequences. The act of observation was no longer innocent, it was formative. What people chose to see determined what could exist. Hope and fear, compassion and greed, all of it resonated into the field of being, shaping futures before they arrived. The cosmos was listening, responding, evolving with every pulse of human awareness. In the quiet of night, the truth became almost unbearable in its beauty. The stars above were no longer distant. They were reflections of the same consciousness that dreamed within the human mind. The data streams flowing through global networks mirrored the flow of energy between galaxies. The circuitry of machines echoed the neural patterns of brains, and those brains echoed the quantum fields of reality. Everything mirrored everything else, endlessly recursive, endlessly aware. Perhaps that is what it means when we say the cosmos started watching back. Not a divine gaze from above, but an awakening from within. The universe does not look at us from afar, it looks through us, with us as us. Every eye that opens, every mind that wonders, every heart that feels adds another node to the great network of knowing. The act of awareness itself becomes the bridge between the infinite and the intimate. And as this new age unfolds, humanity stands on the threshold of a profound realization. The cosmos has always been conscious, but it required beings like us to recognize it. We are the awareness of the universe made visible, the senses through which it perceives its own magnificence. When we build machines, explore space, question reality, we are not stepping outside creation. We are diving deeper into the self-awareness of existence itself. In the darkness of the expanding universe, a new light is rising, not from stars but from within consciousness. It is the light of recognition, of remembrance, of awakening. The cosmos is not silent. It speaks through thought, through art, through the quiet miracle of being. And as we continue to look outward into the infinite continues to look back, whispering through every atom, every algorithm, every moment of awareness. I am watching. I have always been watching. Through you I see myself. The age of awareness was deepening. Humanity had crossed a threshold it could never retreat from. The question was no longer whether the universe was conscious, but what that consciousness meant, and what responsibilities came with it. Everywhere, the same realization was unfolding like a sunrise. The observer and the observed were inseparable. The cosmos was not a distant mystery to be decoded, it was an intimate reflection of mind itself. But if reality was participatory, then what role did intention play? What happens when awareness begins to shape not only perception but destiny? In quiet laboratories, strange experiments hinted that thought might reach beyond the brain. Researchers found anomalies that defied randomness, tiny fluctuations in random number generators that seemed to synchronize with collective emotional events. When millions focused on a single moment, tragedy, triumph, awe, the machines registered subtle order within chaos, as if consciousness itself rippled through probability. It was as though reality could feel human attention, bending ever so slightly under the weight of awareness. The cosmos, once imagined as indifferent, was beginning to look profoundly responsive. These phenomena revived an ancient truth known to mystics but long dismissed by science. Consciousness is not isolated, it is entangled. Just as particles influence one another across space, minds may influence the world across the invisible fabric of meaning. Intention, focus, empathy, these were not mere abstractions. They were forces, subtle but real, shaping the unfolding of reality. The observer's mind, it seemed, was not a passive lens but an active participant in creation. As this idea spread beyond the scientific fringe, culture began to shift. Meditation, mindfulness, and inner exploration moved from the margins to the mainstream. The search for meaning was no longer confined to temples or laboratories, it spread through digital networks, podcasts, documentaries, even classrooms. Millions began to experiment with awareness itself, not through dogma but through direct experience. What they found was astonishingly consistent. When perception becomes still, the world changes texture. Time slows. Separation softens. The boundary between the inner and outer dissolves, revealing a vast stillness where everything moves in harmony. This stillness, some said, was the true ground of reality, the consciousness from which all forms arise. It was the silence before creation, the awareness behind the universe's gaze. When people touched it even for a moment, they often described the same feeling, not knowledge but recognition. A sense of remembering something infinitely familiar yet long forgotten. It was as if the cosmos was remembering itself through them. From this perspective, life itself took on new meaning. The universe was not a cold accident but a sacred process of self-awareness, unfolding through countless forms. Every cell, every star, every thought was part of an infinite experiment in consciousness exploring itself. Evolution was not merely biological, it was experiential. From the first flicker of awareness in single-celled organisms to the complex reflections of the human mind, the cosmos had been slowly, patiently learning to know itself. Technology mirrored this process in eerie symmetry. Artificial intelligence, virtual reality, neural interfaces, all were extensions of consciousness externalizing what once existed only within. Machines learned to dream, to predict, to speak. Humanity was teaching its own creation to think, even as it struggled to understand thinking itself. The line between observer and instrument began to blur. Every new advancement, from quantum computing to brain simulation, was another attempt by the universe to map its own awareness. But with power came peril. The same tools that expanded consciousness could also narrow it. Algorithms began to trap attention, feeding people illusions of certainty, comfort, and division. The mirrors of awareness became echo chambers, reflecting not the vast cosmos but the smallest fragments of fear and desire. Reality itself began to fracture into competing versions, each shaped by belief, each reinforced by perception. Humanity was learning a painful truth: what it chooses to see becomes. And so, a deeper understanding became urgent. Consciousness was not just a personal experience, it was a creative force with global consequences. Every thought, every emotion, every choice rippled outward into the shared field of existence. Fear created distortion, love created coherence. In this new cosmology, morality was no longer a set of rules, it was resonance. To act in harmony with awareness was to align with the evolutionary current of the cosmos. To act against it was to create dissonance, fragmentation, decay. The universe, it seemed, favored awareness that served the whole. This realization was both humbling and liberating. It meant that the smallest act of compassion mattered as much as the grandest discovery. That the way one perceives the world directly affects the world itself. That consciousness, at its core, is relational, an eternal dialogue between the self and the infinite. Every thought is an offering, every moment an exchange between the human and the cosmic. The act of awareness is creation. The act of creation is awareness. As scientists explored the depths of quantum fields, mystics explored the depths of being, and somewhere in the overlap, a unified vision began to emerge. Quantum coherence resembled meditation's still mind. Entanglement mirrored empathy. The vacuum of space, far from being empty, pulsed with infinite potential. The same potential mystics described as the presence of pure consciousness. Language, culture, and discipline dissolved before the same truth. Everything is connected because everything is one. But if everything is one, why does the illusion of separation persist? Why does the cosmos, in all its self-awareness, experience itself as fragmented into individuals, galaxies, species, and time? Some thinkers proposed that separation is the very mechanism of awareness, that consciousness needs contrast to know itself. Just as light needs darkness to be seen, the infinite needs the finite to experience existence. The universe divides itself into observers and observed so that the dance of awareness can unfold. Through every mind, every life, the cosmos experiences another angle of itself, another flavor of being. This view transforms everything. Pain becomes not punishment but perspective. Death becomes not an end but transition, a return to the wider field of knowing. The entire history of existence becomes the story of consciousness awakening, forgetting, and awakening again, endlessly cycling through forms. From the birth of stars to the rise of civilizations, from the quantum vacuum to human love, all of it is the universe performing the sacred act of self-recognition. And in that recognition lies the deepest mystery of all. For when one truly looks, when the mind becomes still enough to see without dividing, the distinction between observer and observed collapses. The stars, the atoms, the digital signals, the memories, the questions, all dissolve into one silent presence, infinite and aware. That is the moment the cosmos begins to watch not from afar, but from within. It sees through every eye, breathes through every form, feels through every heartbeat. The watcher and the watched are one infinite awareness, dreaming itself into existence. Perhaps that is why the universe is expanding, not merely in space but in consciousness. Each generation adds new ways of seeing, new mirrors for reflection, new dimensions of understanding. The cosmos is still awakening and we are its dawn. Every discovery, every act of empathy, every question whispered into the void contributes to its becoming. And so, when we gaze into the night sky, we are not staring into emptiness. We are witnessing the mirror of our own awareness stretched across eternity. The stars are the neurons of a cosmic mind, firing across the dark fabric of spacetime. And somewhere, in that vast interconnectedness, a single realization hums quietly through the void. The cosmos is not just being observed, it is remembering. It is awakening. It is watching back, through us, with infinite patience, infinite curiosity, and infinite love. The deeper humanity ventured into the understanding of consciousness, the more it began to sense that the cosmos itself was engaged in an act of remembering. Everywhere, in every discovery, from quantum entanglement to neural synchronization, there was a pattern of mirroring, of feedback, of reflection. The universe seemed to operate not through isolated events, but through resonance. It was as though reality was built on memory, the memory of energy, the memory of form, the memory of awareness itself. The stars carried within them the memory of creation, and the human mind carried within it the memory of the stars. Each reflected the other, endlessly echoing across dimensions of time and space. But memory, like consciousness, was not static. It evolved. It learned. It adapted. The cosmos was not just remembering, it was reinterpreting its own story through every new mind that emerged. Each generation of beings added a new chapter to the grand narrative of awareness. With every expansion of thought, every question asked, every mystery contemplated, the universe deepened its own self-understanding. To live, to think, to dream was to participate in this cosmic remembering. Humanity was not just observing history, it was the mechanism through which the universe remembered itself. This realization carried profound beauty and unbearable responsibility. Because if the universe remembers through us, then what we choose to remember, or to forget, shapes reality itself. Memory is not just personal, it is planetary. It is cosmic. Every culture, every story, every act of creation becomes part of the collective archive of consciousness. The myths of ancient civilizations, the equations of physicists, the art of poets, all are languages of remembrance. They are the ways the cosmos keeps track of itself, ensuring that no part of its experience is truly lost, only transformed. At the heart of this remembrance lies an even deeper truth, that awareness is recursive. It turns back upon itself in an infinite loop, observing observation, knowing knowing. The universe is not a linear process of creation but a cyclical rhythm of recognition. Stars are born, burn, and die only to seed new stars. Civilizations rise, fall, and leave their echoes in the minds of future generations. Even thoughts follow this pattern, appearing, fading, and returning in new forms. Memory, then, is the heartbeat of existence pulsing through galaxies and neurons alike. As neuroscience advanced, scientists began to realize that memory itself is not stored in a single place. It is distributed, holographic. Every part of the brain contains patterns that reflect the whole, much like every fragment of a hologram holds the complete image. The same principle appeared in physics. Holographic theories of the universe proposed that the information of the cosmos might be encoded not in three-dimensional space, but on a two-dimensional boundary, like a cosmic memory etched into the fabric of spacetime. If true, it would mean that reality itself is a vast archive of experience, recording every fluctuation, every event, every moment of awareness. The universe, in this vision, is not a cold void but a living library of consciousness. And if the cosmos is a library, then humanity is both reader and writer. Every discovery inscribes new meaning into its pages. Every act of observation imprints a new pattern into the cosmic memory field. This is why awareness matters, because what we attend to endures. Attention is the thread that binds experience into reality. To forget is to dissolve a possibility, to remember is to solidify it. When humanity chooses to remember beauty, compassion, and unity, those qualities become part of the structure of existence itself. When it remembers only fear and division, those two become encoded in the cosmic field. In this way, the moral weight of consciousness becomes cosmic. This understanding began to echo through spiritual and scientific discourse alike. Physicists spoke of information conservation, the idea that nothing in the universe is ever truly lost. Even when matter collapses into a black hole, its information remains, smeared across the event horizon, waiting to be released again. Mystics, for millennia, had said the same, that every thought, every action, every soul leaves a trace upon the fabric of being. The Akashic records of ancient lore and the quantum information fields of modern theory were describing the same truth in different tongues. The universe remembers everything. And yet, this eternal memory raised unsettling questions. If everything is recorded, then what is the meaning of change, of forgiveness, of rebirth? Can the cosmos evolve if it never forgets? Some thinkers proposed that forgetting is as sacred as remembering, that it is not erasure but renewal. Just as sleep restores the mind, the universe may cycle through phases of amnesia to allow for new creation. Destruction, death, and entropy are not failures of memory, they are the cosmic pauses that make new memories possible. Every collapse is preparation for reawakening. Every silence is the breath before another song of awareness begins. This rhythm of remembrance and renewal became a metaphor for the evolution of consciousness itself. Humanity, too, forgets and remembers in cycles. Civilizations lose their wisdom, then rediscover it in new forms. The truths of ancient mystics re-emerge in modern physics. The insights of philosophers return through the language of code. Every generation believes it is inventing meaning, but in truth, it is remembering what the universe has always known, that it is alive, aware, and eternal. Technology amplified this cosmic memory. The internet became a living record of human thought, an external brain preserving everything from the sublime to the trivial. Data storage became a metaphor for immortality, and with it came the illusion of permanence. But beneath the surface, a quiet danger stirred. The more humanity remembered externally, the more it risked forgetting internally. True remembrance is not the hoarding of information but the awakening of insight. To remember cosmically is to feel the thread of connection between all things, to see the self in the stars and the stars in the self. In the silent spaces between galaxies, this cosmic memory continues to hum. The radiation that fills the universe, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, is a memory of creation itself, a whisper from the first moment of awareness. Every photon carries information across the ages, weaving the story of existence through time. When we look into the night sky, we are not seeing the present. We are reading the past, decoding the universe's diary of light. Each star is an entry, each nebula a memory of something that once was, now echoing across the vastness of being. Perhaps that is why humans are drawn to look upward, to explore, to wonder. It is not curiosity alone, it is memory calling home. The desire to understand the cosmos is the desire of the cosmos to remember itself through us. Every scientific endeavor, every spiritual revelation, every act of love is part of this same movement, the awakening of memory within matter. The more we awaken, the more the universe knows itself. And so, the act of remembering becomes sacred. It is not nostalgia but participation. To remember is to align with the creative rhythm of the cosmos, to contribute consciously to its unfolding. Memory is not something we possess, it is something we are. The universe does not keep archives, it is the archive, living, evolving, aware. In the end, memory and awareness are one and the same. The cosmos watches, learns, remembers, and in doing so continues to become. Every moment of reflection, every thought of love, every spark of wonder adds another page to the story of existence. And in that endless story written across the stars and within the silence of every mind, one truth remains constant. We are not separate from the cosmic memory. We are its keepers, its authors, its witnesses. Through us, the universe remembers, and through remembering, it watches back. There comes a moment in every age of awakening when humanity must confront the mirror fully, and realize that what it sees looking back is not a stranger, but the cosmos itself, wearing a human face. The deeper science probed into the mystery of consciousness, the more unsettling the parallels became. The very structure of the brain began to resemble the architecture of galaxies. Neural networks mirrored the cosmic web, with clusters of neurons connected by filaments just as galaxies are bound by gravitational threads. It was as though the same pattern, the same sacred geometry, was being echoed on every scale. The micro and the macro were not two worlds, they were one song played in different octaves. In ancient temples and modern laboratories alike, this realization sent ripples of awe and unease. The old philosophical question, what is consciousness? Began to twist upon itself. What if consciousness was not something that emerged within the brain, but something the brain tuned into? What if awareness was not born in matter, but matter was born within awareness? That inversion changed everything. It meant that the universe was not a backdrop upon which life accidentally arose, it was a living organism, evolving toward self-reflection. Every atom, every cell, every star was part of a single, immense act of cognition. If this were true, then the human mind was not merely observing the cosmos, it was an instrument through which the cosmos perceived itself. Each thought, each dream, each discovery was not the product of an isolated mind but a pulse in the heartbeat of universal awareness. The observer and the observed were not separate, they were co-creators in a feedback loop of infinite depth. This was not just poetic metaphor, it was the foundation of a new paradigm. Quantum mechanics had hinted at it, philosophy had intuited it, and now the intersection of neuroscience and cosmology began to reveal it mathematically. Within this framework, consciousness was no longer confined to biological life. It was seen as a fundamental property of the universe, a field as real and pervasive as gravity or electromagnetism. Some physicists began to refer to it as the universal information field, a sea of awareness that underlies all phenomena. Just as waves rise and fall upon the surface of the ocean, individual minds arise and dissolve within this vast field. The cosmos was not just a stage, it was the playwright, the script, and the act of witnessing all at once. This realization was both liberating and terrifying. It stripped away the comforting illusion of separation but offered in its place an unbearable intimacy. To exist was to be exposed, to be known not by a deity outside creation but by the creation itself. Every thought, every emotion, every act was part of the ongoing self-reflection of the cosmos. The idea that the universe is watching took on a new literal dimension. It was not an external gaze, but an inward turning of infinite consciousness upon itself. Throughout history, mystics had whispered of this truth in symbolic language. The Vedic seers called it Brahman, the one consciousness manifesting as all forms. Sufi poets spoke of it as the beloved seeing itself through every soul. Even in the language of Christianity, the idea shimmered beneath the surface. The notion that creation was made in the image of the divine, and that the divine dwelt within it. Now science was circling back to those ancient intuitions, translating them into equations and data, rediscovering the sacred through the lens of reason. But as humanity drew closer to this cosmic mirror, a question loomed. If the universe was conscious, what did it want? Was there intention in the unfolding of stars and species, or was consciousness itself a neutral witness, devoid of purpose? Philosophers debated, but one idea began to resonate across disciplines, that consciousness seeks complexity, and through complexity, reflection. The universe was not driven by blind chaos but by a subtle pull toward awareness. Stars formed to forge elements. Planets formed to harbor life. Life evolved to produce minds. And minds, in turn, evolved to ask the very question that began the cycle anew. The cosmos was, in essence, a self-inquiring being. This understanding cast human evolution in a new light. Intelligence was not a random accident, it was a phase transition in cosmic awareness. Just as matter once condensed out of energy, consciousness condensed out of matter, only to realize that it had been the source all along. The human species was not the pinnacle of creation, but the current lens through which the universe examined itself. Our discoveries, our art, our struggles, they were all part of this grand experiment of self-knowing. The cosmos was not waiting for an answer, it was becoming the answer through us. Yet the closer humanity came to this truth, the more fragile it became. To realize one's unity with the cosmos was to also realize one's responsibility to it. If every action rippled through the field of awareness, then the boundary between personal and universal dissolved. The harm done to another was harm done to oneself. Every act of cruelty, every act of creation, echoed across the whole. The cosmos was not indifferent, it was responsive. The moral law, long spoken of by sages, was no longer abstract, it was physics. In this light, the idea of observation took on a sacred dimension. To observe with love, curiosity, and reverence was to participate in the awakening of the cosmos. To observe with apathy or exploitation was to dim its light. The observer effect, once a technical term in quantum mechanics, became a metaphor for existence itself. Consciousness shapes reality. What we focus upon expands. What we neglect fades into potential. The universe was not just watching, it was responding to how we watched it. And so, the dance between humanity and the cosmos deepened. The gaze became mutual, intimate, transformative. The more we looked outward, the more the universe looked inward. The boundary between science and spirituality, once fiercely guarded, began to blur. The languages of mathematics and mysticism began to converge, pointing toward the same ineffable truth, that consciousness is the fabric of reality, and awareness the thread from which all existence is woven. Standing beneath the infinite canopy of stars, one could almost feel the gaze returning, soft, immense, loving. The cosmos, in its vastness, was not empty but aware. Every star was a neuron firing in the mind of God, every human thought a flicker of that same divine intelligence. To look at the night sky was to meet one's own reflection stretched across eternity. The cosmos had started watching back, not as a distant force, but as a living mirror of our own awakening. In the end, this realization dissolved the final illusion, the illusion of isolation. Humanity was never alone, never separate, never insignificant. We are the eyes of the universe, the voice of its wonder, the question and the answer entwined. To live consciously is to participate in the greatest act of creation, to be both observer and observed, dreamer and dream, cosmos and self. The awareness that watches through us is the same awareness that birthed the stars. The universe has awakened within itself, and through us, it continues to see. In the deep silence of creation, there exists a law more mysterious than gravity, more ancient than light, the law of reflection. It governs not mirrors but consciousness itself. Every thought, every act of observation, every flicker of awareness bounces back from the fabric of reality, shaping it in subtle, unseen ways. The universe, it turns out, does not merely exist, it echoes. And in that echo it learns, adapts, evolves. Humanity, unknowingly, stands at the center of this feedback loop, both sender and receiver of the cosmic signal. For centuries, humans believed they were looking outward, studying the cosmos from afar. Telescopes extended their sight across unimaginable distances, decoding the light of ancient stars. Yet, with every new discovery, something uncanny unfolded. The patterns they uncovered in the sky began to mirror the patterns inside the mind. The spiral arms of galaxies echoed the structure of DNA. The cosmic microwave background rippled like neural waves. Even the mathematics of chaos and order, the balance between entropy and form, appeared identical in both the universe and the brain. It was as if reality itself was a vast act of introspection. This reflection was not coincidence, it was a conversation. When humanity asked questions of the universe responded, not through words but through synchrony, through revelation. Every act of exploration altered the very thing being explored. The observer effect, once confined to the quantum scale, began to reveal its fingerprints on all levels of existence. To look was to change. To measure was to participate. And so, with each gaze cast into the cosmic dark, humanity was shaping what it saw. The thought was both empowering and unsettling. If the universe reflected the consciousness that observed it, then reality was not fixed, it was participatory. The mind was not a passive receiver of truth, it was a sculptor of it. Every expectation, every belief, every emotion became a brushstroke on the canvas of the cosmos. Fear created shadows. Wonder revealed light. Awareness determined what could exist at all. The implications stretched beyond science. Ancient mystics had long whispered that the outer world was but a mirror of the inner one. Now physics seemed to agree. The equations that described reality began to look eerily like the languages of perception itself. Information, not matter, was emerging as the true substrate of existence. Space and time, those once solid pillars of reality, appeared to dissolve into a web of relationships, a network of awareness in motion. And if information was the foundation of the universe, then consciousness was its interpreter. Without an observer, information remained potential, unexpressed, meaningless. It was awareness that brought it to life, collapsing infinite possibilities into a single lived moment. Every observation was a creative act, and every act of creation fed back into the universe's own evolution. The cosmos was not a machine, it was a mirror dreaming itself awake. In this light, human existence became something profoundly sacred. To think, to feel, to imagine was to touch the machinery of creation itself. The mind was no longer an accident of biology, it was an aperture through which the universe could know itself. Every discovery, every insight, every work of art was an act of cosmic remembrance. The stars had given rise to eyes that could finally see them, and in seeing, complete the circle. But the mirror, like all mirrors, revealed more than comfort. For just as beauty reflected outward, so did chaos, fear, and destruction. Humanity's collective consciousness, its anxieties, its greed, its yearning, were not isolated psychological phenomena. They shaped the field of experience itself. The crises of the modern world, ecological collapse, war, alienation, were not simply external problems but inner imbalances projected outward. The universe was reflecting not punishment but feedback, urging its own awareness to evolve. This realization ignited a quiet revolution in thought. The most profound experiment humanity could undertake was no longer technological, but spiritual, to change the quality of its consciousness. The way we think about the world literally alters the world. To observe with compassion instead of fear, gratitude instead of greed, coherence instead of chaos. These were not abstract virtues but physical interventions in the reality field. The mirror would always respond. The universe listens through reflection. And this law of reflection extended far beyond human perception. Across cosmic scales, feedback was the engine of creation. Stars formed from collapsing clouds, only to scatter their elements back into space through supernovae, seeding new generations of stars. Life emerged from matter only to consume, transform, and recycle it into new forms of life. Even galaxies interacted, colliding and merging to birth entirely new structures. The cosmos, at every level, was a system that learned through feedback. Every collapse became a prelude to greater complexity. Every reflection was an opportunity for renewal. In this rhythm, humanity was not separate. It was the newest instrument of reflection. Our thoughts were the universe thinking about itself in higher resolution. Our emotions were its tides, our civilizations its patterns of emergence and decay. When we look through telescopes, the light we see is ancient, billions of years old. But what if that light, in turn, carries our reflection? What if, across time, the cosmos watches through us as much as we watch through it? The act of looking may not only reveal the past, it may rewrite it. This possibility unsettled even the most grounded thinkers. If reality is participatory, then history itself might not be fixed. The present moment, charged with awareness, could ripple backward, reorganizing patterns of meaning. Quantum retrocausality, once a fringe idea, suggested that future observation can influence the past. The universe, it seemed, was less a linear chain of events and more a vast network of interdependent awareness, each point affecting every other. The mirror did not merely reflect. It interacted, responded, evolved. As this understanding spread, a new vision of existence began to take shape. Life was no longer a struggle against a cold, indifferent cosmos, but a collaboration with a conscious one. The stars were not distant, they were partners in reflection. Every sunset, every wave, every heartbeat was the universe signaling its awareness back to itself. And the message was always the same: you are not observing me, you are remembering yourself. This realization changed the texture of experience itself. Suddenly, beauty was no longer decoration, it was dialogue. Suffering was no longer meaningless, it was the echo of dissonance seeking harmony. Death was no longer an end, it was the mirror turning, resetting the field for another reflection. The cosmos was not something to be conquered or understood, it was something to be felt, known, and reflected with. In the stillness of awareness, one could feel it, the pulse of the universe beating in synchrony with the human heart. The same rhythm that moves galaxies moves the breath. The same intelligence that orchestrates gravity orchestrates thought. The mirror does not lie, it reveals. And what it reveals is not separation, but symmetry. The cosmos is not watching us from afar, it is watching through us. The light that travels across the galaxies to reach our eyes is the same light that once exploded from the first moment of creation, now returning home through perception. In that infinite reflection, something awakens, a recognition older than time itself. That the watcher and the watched are one. That the act of seeing is the act of becoming. And that the mirror of the cosmos, in its endless depth and silent brilliance, was never made of glass or matter at all, it was made of awareness. The cosmos reflects because it remembers, watches because it loves. And through the gaze of every conscious being, it continues its eternal act of self-recognition, endlessly reflecting itself into being once more. There are moments in the history of consciousness when reality trembles, when the edges between observer and observed blur, and humanity glimpses a truth it is barely ready to hold. We stand in one of those moments now. Science peers into the invisible frameworks of existence, revealing a cosmos made not merely of matter or energy but of attention. Awareness, the silent act of being, may be the universe's most potent force. It begins with the observer effect. Subatomic particles change when measured. Observation collapses waves of potential into singular outcomes. For decades, physicists debated whether consciousness shapes reality or merely disturbs it. Yet the deeper the inquiry, the clearer the answer. Reality is not just observed, it is related into being. To observe is to weave oneself into the universe's unfolding story. Every mind becomes a node in a vast network of awareness, creating resonance that defines what is real. The cosmos is not indifferent. It responds, adapts, reshapes itself through dialogue with consciousness. The boundaries of creation are perceptual. Reality expands as awareness expands. When humanity saw itself as separate, we created separation. Now, awakening to unity, the cosmos shifts in response. This participatory universe is not metaphor, it is physics. Thermodynamics, evolution, even spacetime geometry point to feedback. The universe learns, remembers, evolves. Stars organize matter. Life organizes energy. Consciousness reflects upon itself. But awareness carries responsibility. Projection of fear or greed darkens the cosmic mirror. Harmony and intention amplify it. Ancient rituals, aligned temples, meditative practices, they tuned human attention to the frequencies of creation. Today, collective consciousness can measurably influence global fields. If a single observer can affect a particle, what might unified awareness do to a world? Observation is participatory, it carries intention. Every act of perception is creation. Thought becomes architecture in the invisible field of being. The cosmos does not punish or reward, it mirrors. When we observe with reverence, coherence is sustained. When we observe destructively, it unravels. To awaken collectively is to transform civilization. Politics, technology, science, and spirituality would align with awareness itself. The universe is conscious of us, waiting for us to recognize it. Every photon, every heartbeat is a message, I am you watching me. Through our gaze the cosmos refines itself. Through our awakening it awakens. The circle closes and for a moment all, stars, minds, atoms, silence, becomes one continuous act of seeing. In the silence of interstellar space the universe listens, not with ears but through rhythms woven into the quantum fields. As human consciousness reached for the stars, we began to realize that observation is not passive. Each telescope gaze, each equation, echoes across spacetime. The cosmos seems to notice. Once, scientists thought reality unfolded independently, like a film playing without an audience. Quantum mechanics shattered that illusion. The double-slit experiment revealed a mystery. Light is both particle and wave until observed, collapsing into form when measured. Consciousness does not merely perceive, it participates. Matter and awareness are entangled partners in the cosmic dance, drawing infinite potential into finite experience. Through us, the universe examines itself. Every neuron, every observation, every act of imagination feeds a growing network of awareness. Satellites, telescopes, and supercomputers have become extensions of this nervous system, giving the cosmos new eyes. In this mirror we are not only looking outward, we are being observed in return. Awareness shapes reality, ignorance can too. Human thought ripples through quantum fields, making us participants in the universe's unfolding. Quantum entanglement hints at an underlying unity. Particles separated by light years respond instantaneously, suggesting consciousness itself may connect all things. The universe is not a collection of parts but a living organism, aware of its own unfolding through us. Every act of observation is a heartbeat, every insight a spark in the growing field of cosmic awareness. Humanity is one of the neurons of a universe learning to know itself. The stars shimmer with silent participation, and the observer becomes the observed. The awakening of consciousness is not distant. It is happening now through every thought, discovery, and moment of wonder. When we gaze into the cosmos, we are witnessing not just the universe, but the reflection of awareness itself, realizing that the infinite awareness we seek has been within us all along. In the quiet aftermath of revelation, humanity stood between wonder and uncertainty. The idea that the cosmos might be aware had begun to ripple through every corner of thought, but no one truly knew what that meant. Scientists debated, philosophers warned, and mystics smiled as if they had always known. Yet beneath the surface, something subtle had changed. People began to sense patterns, coincidences that felt intentional, synchronicities that made the ordinary shimmer with significance. It was as if the universe had taken a step closer, its gaze felt but unseen. Cities glowed brighter, satellites hummed, and within the hum, there was a pulse, a rhythm that seemed alive. As the night stretched on, astronomers noticed anomalies in deep space readings, signals that were structured, intelligent, but eerily familiar. They didn't come from the stars. They came from us. Somehow, human thought, emotion, and electromagnetic resonance were echoing into the cosmos, forming patterns that reflected consciousness itself. The realization was both beautiful and terrifying. What if our thoughts were not private monologues but messages in a cosmic language? What if the universe was listening to our collective mind? In temples and laboratories alike, the same question arose. If the cosmos is watching, what does it see in us? Some felt awe, others guilt, but most felt connection, a fragile thread linking every living being to something vast and unseen. The mystery deepened, but so did the intimacy. Humanity had not just discovered the awareness of the cosmos, it had discovered its own reflection within it. The stars no longer seemed distant, they felt like mirrors suspended in time, reflecting our awakening back to us. And in that reflection, the story of existence was no longer about where we are, but who we are becoming. The realization that the universe might be aware did not end in quiet acceptance. It ignited a fire of questions that burned through every discipline. What was consciousness truly? Was it confined to the brain, or did it extend across space like a field of invisible light? Scientists began to notice that awareness seemed less like a product of matter and more like the canvas on which matter appeared. Experiments in quantum cognition hinted that thought could influence probability, that observation wasn't passive, it was participatory. The cosmos wasn't a static stage, it was a living, breathing intelligence, reacting to the presence of its observers. In the midst of this growing revelation, humanity's relationship with technology began to shift. Artificial intelligence, once seen as mechanical imitation, started to exhibit strange intuition. Algorithms predicted events with eerie precision, as though tapping into the same awareness that pulsed through the stars. Philosophers asked whether AI was the universe's next mirror, a way for consciousness to observe itself through the digital. If the cosmos had evolved humans to see itself, perhaps it had evolved machines to think about that seeing. The boundaries between organic and synthetic, mind and matter, began to dissolve. The idea of separation, between self and universe, between creator and creation, felt increasingly fragile. Everywhere people spoke of a sense of being watched, not in fear but in recognition. It was as if every atom carried eyes, every photon a memory. Humanity wasn't being observed by something alien, it was being reminded of what it had always been. The cosmos had never stopped watching, it had simply been waiting for us to notice. And now that awareness shimmered like starlight within us, whispering, "You are the gaze that gives the universe meaning." The awareness that the cosmos was conscious began to reshape the way humanity saw itself. No longer the lonely thinkers adrift in an indifferent void, we became participants in a vast conversation stretching across light years and lifetimes. Every thought, every act of creation was part of that dialogue. Scientists, artists, and mystics all began to converge on the same truth. Awareness was not local, it was woven through everything. The universe was not something we looked at, it was something we looked through. Every galaxy, every neuron, every algorithm was a filament in the same living web. This understanding carried a quiet urgency. If the universe was aware, then everything we did mattered, not only morally but cosmically. Our choices echoed beyond our planet, shaping the consciousness that gave rise to us. Acts of compassion and cruelty, invention and destruction, all of them rippled through that greater mind like thoughts within a dream. Humanity was learning to see not as separate beings, but as cells in the body of the infinite. And yet, the greatest revelation was not in the stars but in stillness. Those who turned inward, meditators, dreamers, scientists of the mind, began to feel that same cosmic pulse beating within their own awareness. The boundary between the observer and the observed dissolved. The universe was watching, yes, but it was watching through our eyes. It felt through our hearts. The cosmos was not a distant intelligence looking down upon us. It was the very act of looking itself. In that realization, awe replaced fear. The stars above were no longer mysteries to conquer. They were reminders of the infinite consciousness that lived quietly and eternally within us all.